Hey, first of all, Chris, I love the Twitter handle Smitty on MLB. That is terrific.
Well, it was supposed to be Smitty on baseball, but it was too many letters for that, because that was the name of my original blog back in the day.
Hmm.
When I started out with not when I started out, but when I started covering baseball with the Eagle Tribune, it was Smitty on Baseball was the blog. And so I wanted that as the Twitter handle, but couldn't do that. So I picked it as Smitty on MLB.
Well, you reporter for MassLive covering the Red Sox, but for people watching, I love where you're at. You're on the back porch. Look at that view you have, huh?
Yeah, we moved to Georgetown, Mass, about I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. And yes, I sit out on this back porch, which I paid a lot of money for the porch.
Yeah.
That was one of the things with the house. We had to get the porch done. So, so yeah, so I try to use it as much as possible. Plus, the 1 year old loves to come out here and run around on the porch. So
Yeah.
better than having her watch TV all day.
How's that been? I can imagine it's ups and downs, but a lot of ups having a daughter.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Actually, my wife was telling me yesterday that in the middle of the night, she woke up at 12 o'clock and said, Dada. And there was just three things she said, like, Dada. Oh, yeah, goody, goody, good. She says, goody, goody, good, that phrase.
Yeah.
I don't know where she got it, but she says that. And then she goes, blah, blah, blah. So she did those three things, uh, you know, two times in a row, and then just went back to sleep. But yeah, so she's a little weird, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's really fun. I always say, like, the coronavirus is obviously a terrible thing that we had to go through, and it stinks because we couldn't do our job right as reporters this year. We couldn't go in the clubhouse, and obviously I'm concerned about that, heading into next year, that we're going to be on Zoom calls again next year, because I mean, the CDC says that there isn't going to be a vaccine for the general public until July 1st.
Yeah.
So, but the one cool thing was when I was just home in April, May, June, and that's when she started walking and everything, and
Yeah.
started crawling, walking, pushing herself, crawling, pushing herself out, pulling herself up, and walking. So I got to see that, all that stuff, for her to do it the first time, as opposed to if I was out on the road in Toronto for opening day or something.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of positive. I mean, as a broadcaster for 20 plus years, I mean, this is the first time I've ever had this time off, and I did a lot of family stuff,
Yeah,
play golf with my dad every week. I mean, this is a year that we might never have again for the business we're in.
yeah, exactly. And so it was a good opportunity, and it's a good opportunity to just chill out. And we've set up a routine too, like me and my daughter. We go to, like, the park every morning. I bring her down in this horse and buggy. She's got this car that she got from her, for it's not a real horse. And she got this thing from her aunt for her birthday, and it's like this, like, just a kid's car, but it's
Yeah.
like a buggy and a horse and everything. And we walk down to town, go to the playground every day. I push her, on the swing, and we go down the slides and stuff. And then we come back, and everybody, like, looks at us like we have, two faces, like,
Yeah.
what's going on? Why is he pushing her in that thing? But yeah, so we have a good time, and, we set up a good routine, and, we've just kind of made the best of the situation.
Yeah. You know what's great about younger kids is they get so excited about just the basic things. And man, the park to them is just that's
Oh,
Disneyland,
Oh, it's awesome.
you know?
It's actually funny because my wife dresses her, you say that, Disneyland. My wife dresses her up in, Mickey Mouse or Minnie Mouse stuff all the time. And I'm like, don't let her know about these Minnie Mouse views.
Yeah.
We're going to have to be spending money to go to Disney World. The park's fine for her right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. So yeah, they love it, and they do the weirdest things when they get there. Like, yeah, she loves the swing and the slide and all that, but all of a sudden she'll just want to, like, go on, just sit down and play with the mulch, or
Yeah.
go over this, this walking area that's just a regular area that, it's like, what are you
Yep.
doing? So you're better off to instead of wasting money on toys, just buy, giving a kid like a water bottle or something.
Yeah, or like sand and a balloon, and they go nuts over
Exactly.
those things.
Oh, they love it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's cool.
What maybe she's going to grow up a baseball person. If you start seeing her give signs in the hallway, watch out.
Yeah, well, I tweeted out the other day, and it was joking. I said, she's a real fan of the Tampa Bay Rays because she loves figure metrics and she loves analytics and no, but so yeah, I mean, whatever she wants. I actually, whatever she wants to do, whatever she wants to do. But
Yeah.
I'd love for her to get into drumming too because I'm a drummer,
Oh,
and so
cool.
yeah, I've already introduced her to the drums a little bit, and maybe she'll be like one of these freak kids at like 2 years old that's already playing the drums. So we'll see. But
Yeah.
unless she doesn't want to do it, that's fine, I guess, right?
Yeah, and you can learn on YouTube now, right? They don't need
Yeah.
dad.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Hey, so you have a Twitter page for her, right? I saw in your
I
bio.
do. I do. Yeah. I was really a lot more active with it, like when she was, when she was, when she was in the womb, because
Yeah.
like we had a couple miscarriages, and so
Okay.
it was a stressful time before she was born.
Yeah.
You worry going to every ultrasound, that you're not going to see a heartbeat or something,
Hmm.
and so we kind of just did it to just relax a little bit and have some fun because I was always like, I'm not going to have any fun until the baby actually is born, but then I
Sure.
just was like, you know what, let's have some fun because, and so, I would, do like small tweets about like, I would bring her. I used to get like everywhere I went during the baseball season last year, every park I went, I got her a stuffed animal, from that park. And so I would tweet, the stuffed animal. Oh, my dad got me this stuffed animal this time and stuff like that. But I have to get on it more. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
She does more tweeting than I do.
She can do her picks of the week and betting, and she'll be people will be
Exactly.
like, "Who's this baby that knows all this stuff?"
Yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. That's a great story. This season was weird, wasn't it? This
Yeah.
first of all weird.
Yeah. It
All
was
of
a really
MLB.
weird
Yeah.
season.
We'll get right to the Red Sox. It was strange.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, go ahead and ask me what you want on them. But yeah, it was strange. I mean, I kind of knew going in that they weren't going to be great because
Hmm.
of, Chris Sale's injury. But then things multiplied, obviously, when Eduardo Rodriguez, was out for the year. And then, I mean, people forget Colin McHugh, too, was supposed to be a
Sure.
pitcher on the team.
Yep.
And, and he opted out, I think, within the first 2 weeks of training camp. And so, those are two pitchers right there, even without Chris Sale. And so, I think they would have been a lot better,
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that they would have been great, but they probably would have been a team around 500. And, and we know that the Houston Astros are a team around 500 and they got in the playoffs. So
Yep.
because they expanded playoffs. So I think that, the pitching really hurt them. Obviously, missing those three pitchers really hurt them because, the offense did struggle. But they still at the end of the day they put up some numbers. So
Yeah.
so I think that that's really what Bloom has to focus on, and going into the offseason. One interesting thing is, you look at it and they got 13 wins from their starters this year, and 5 of them came from the 5 starts that Tanner Houck and Nick Pivetta had.
Yeah.
5-0 in those 5 games. So there were some positives at the end. You looked at the way Houck pitched, you looked at the way Pivetta pitched, and that Bloom's going to he's going to improve the staff, and
Sure.
he's going to do some interesting things this offseason. I know that Sam Kennedy talks about, there is a budget, but let's just say that there is a budget, but they are going to sign free agents and they are going to, make trades, and it's going to be interesting to see what Bloom does.
Yeah, I'm actually very excited. I think having a Rays influence is something I've always wanted to see. I mean, look at their track record.
Yeah.
And it's exciting. I mean, they've won a lot, but now they're in that crossroads and they have someone that's got experience fixing it. So I think there is a fun element to this. We learned a lot about Bobby Dahlbeck too.
Yep.
How do they mix and match guys in their system, identifying new players.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've even previous regimes, they've been good at those sleeper deals, getting a Brock Holt or. So I'm excited for this. The fan in me looking to see what they're going to do.
Yeah, Jerry DiPoto was telling me at the GM meetings last November, he's like, this could be a scary combination with Bloom,
Mm.
roster building wise. And, I totally agree, because you look at a guy like, Andrew Friedman, who's with the Dodgers and came, went from he was the guy that got the race to the World Series the first time.
Yes.
And he's done an incredibly interesting job with the Rays, because, they're winning at the major league level and they have, a top 3 farm system. So you just don't see that often.
No.
The Cubs, once they started winning at the major league level, then their farm system tailed off a little bit. But he's consistently kept it. And as I've told so many people, I'm like, well, yeah, sure. Bloom could go out this offseason and sign a free agent to a 9-digit contract, but it took Friedman, 5.5 years before he gave out a 9-digit contract. He gave out the big ones, obviously, 95, I think, some of those, like to Turner and to Kershaw. But he never gave out a 9-digit contract until he signed, until he re-signed Mookie Betts. He gave Mookie Betts an extension. So, I think it's a good thing. Like, as DiPoto was telling me, he's like, these guys, it's like they learn from their small market principles, and then they can use that in a big market. And, and we've seen Friedman with the Dodgers operate that way. He still has some small market principles, but he can also, intertwine them with, having some money. And I think that's really the exciting thing about Bloom. Another interesting thing is you look with the Tampa Bay Rays, and you have to hit on a few guys, right, from other teams that other teams gave up on. I mean, even the Red Sox first 3 World Series were helped by that, because, the Twins non-tendered David Ortiz,
Yes. Yeah.
And so, you look at a guy like, Christian Arroyo, who I didn't really know what to expect from him, he might not be great. But what I saw was a guy that's 25 years old, that had some injuries at the beginning of his career, that people gave up on him at that point. And he came in and he looks like he can hit for some power. And he looks like he looks like he's, a guy that maybe is one of those guys that you have over on that Tampa Bay roster right now and it's funny because the Red Sox, he was a guy that Tampa Bay gave up on, but is one of those guys that Tampa Bay has right now. The guy that pitched, I forget his name, but the guy that pitched last night, the 7th inning or whatever, they're like, he was DFA, last year. So, that's really what a lot of people are like, oh, what's this stuff that Bloom is bringing in, terms of, a bunch of guys that are DFA'd from previous teams. But you've got to find those guys, and they found some. They found Phillips Valdez, who was obviously really good. And so if you can come away with, of all those guys that they claimed off waivers, if you can come away with 3 or 4 guys, or even 1 or 2 guys that help you, long term, that's huge.
Yeah. Perfectly said. I agree with you, because I think there's a shift in thinking overall too, maybe by fans. I mean, just giving someone a lot of money is not always going to work out either. And you have to live with that. That's the problem with the big market teams. Yes, they do have advantages. We know that, but you got to live with it. You have to live with Pablo Sandoval or Castillo and all that, where the small market teams, they can just say, see you later.
Exactly. You know what? That's right on. And, and so it's interesting, how, you've got to be careful going into this off season, because you have money now. You traded David Price. The payroll is a certain amount, but you don't want to now pick the wrong free agent. And I think that was the case with Andrew Friedman. The guys within the organization who were proven guys, he gave them extensions, but he waited for the right guy. And Mookie Betts is the guy that he, probably had his eye on for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
There was a story in The Athletic by Andy McAuliffe, who had written last offseason or 2 off seasons ago or something like that, if they miss out on Garrett Cole, Mookie Betts is the guy. So people have already known that Andrew Friedman was going after Mookie Betts a long time ago, and that he had his eye on somebody. So you really have to target people. And the Yankees, for instance, they have incorporated some small market principles into their game.
Yes.
Brian Cashman has. He hasn't gone out and the Cole Hamels contract was a big contract, obviously, but that was the first time in a while. He had a lot of, like, we're not going to go over this amount, and if the free agent signs with somebody for over this amount, that's fine, because we're going to have, a strict number, and we're going to hold on to that number. And, Cashman, I mean, that was something that they decided to do, I think, earlier in the decade, and they really didn't get onto the CBT until a couple of years ago. It took them a while, but I talked with Cashman about that last year at the GM meetings too. And so a lot of teams are doing this, even teams like the Yankees, where they're mixing small market principles with big market principles. And it's the way to do business now, really. It's the smart way to do business. You just can't go out and sign a bunch of people because you're going to be strapped with a lot of money. We saw it, in 2011 or 2012 when, Ben Sherrington traded away a lot of guys. He got the Dodgers to take a lot of money, and then they go out the night. They're free to, they're free to reload, and they reload and win the 2013 World Series. So, it's really important to think of things both ways. And I think Bloom is that kind of guy, obviously, that's going to do that.
Yeah, and I will see the Yankees are a great example. I mean, the farm system has been ridiculous, but when they start doing things, because I thought Theo brought this here, once the big markets start doing what the little markets, it makes it even cooler. But the fact that the Yankees identified Luke Voit, LeMahieu, which I don't know why no one wanted, Urshela,
it's unbelievable.
They were able to. I mean, the way that they rebuilt that infield, barely spending any money, is remarkable. Really is.
Yeah. And, people look at them and they're like, well, they still haven't won a championship, but they have,
they're healthy, right?
The ALCS. Yeah, exactly. And they've been to the ALCS, now 2 or 3 times within the last few years. So, I mean, they have a model that's sustainable right now. And, that's the important thing. I think that you look at what Sam Kennedy's frustrated with. Bloom can't be frustrated with it because he just came in. But, some of these guys that are frustrated with the ups and downs. Yeah, of course you're going to take the 4 championships. But the Red Sox have also had, 4 last place finishes since 2012. And so what Bloom is able to do is and I think he's going to change the philosophy, even in the farm side. I wrote about it today where, you look at, it's going to make it more sustainable so that they have, their lows aren't going to be as low as they have them in recent years. Now, one thing that I loved in Bloom got criticized for it a little bit. I can name a fellow beat writer that wrote it, but I won't. Why didn't he bring up Houck earlier in the season? But I think it's good, and I think it will benefit these guys that you'd rather prospects stay down there a little bit too long, might stay down there a little bit too long, then a little bit too early. I think that really benefits guys. And, I think we'll see that with Mata. He's a guy that needs to just hit the last thing with him is really the command, I mean, he's got just excellent stuff. Paul Abbott was talking about how, it's some of the best stuff in the game or whatever he said. His quote was, but, he's going to benefit from them saying, okay, we're going to take like the Tanner Houck route with you. Tanner struggled against lefties. We're going to make sure that he's fully ready before he goes to the majors. And they're going to do the same thing with Mata. And, and that's something that they hadn't done as much in recent years. They rushed some guys up. And, when you rush some guys up, there's obviously growing pains. I mean, we saw some growing pains, obviously, with, when they rushed up Moncada and Rafael Torres, I think both those guys came from, maybe Moncada was a little bit like a few games at AAA, but I think they brought up Benintendi straight from AA, and they brought up Devers straight from AA. So I don't think you're going to see that with Bloom. I think you're going to see guys that, like Duran, he would have been an obvious guy to bring up and see what he could have done in September, but they're going to be like, okay, go play for the Worcester Red Sox next year. make sure you're ready before you come up. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
I think that's fascinating.
I do too, because I remember Arnie Baylor telling me the hardest year for a young player is the second year. And I never understood that. I go, why wouldn't the first year be harder? And he said, it's not. They'll adjust to you. And you see some guys in that second year, Chris, and I thought I saw with some of those young guys not knowing how to run the bases in the big leagues, that you have to be able to do those
Yep.
things. Those little things they're not really refined on.
Yeah, I mean, Devers' numbers dropped, dramatically from the first year to the second year, and then the third year, he was in the MVP voting.
Yeah.
And well, yeah, I mean, that's definitely so. I always kind of joke about like what were they doing with Wade Boggs, having him down in Pawtucket for so long, and they probably waited a little too long with him.
He was blocked. I remember that, but they should have
but,
moved him. Yeah.
but yes, but in philosophy, you do probably it is a thing that the Rays have done, and that we'll probably see the Red Sox do here now is wait a little longer than a little too soon.
Yeah. I wanted to get back to the highs and lows. And my theory is, as an organization, you have to figure out what you want to be. You can't be, when Theo came in, okay, we're for the prospects, and then he's out, and then it's the Dombrowski and then it's up, down. You want to spend money, you don't. You have to, at some point, I think you got to find an identity. That's what I love about the Patriots. Now, the Red Sox certainly have done a lot of things right, but I think the highs and lows are from different philosophies, right? From their leaders.
Yeah. And ownerships change their minds too on some things.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, they were the ones that said no with John Lester because he's 30, something years old, and no pitchers past 30, and then they go and sign David Price. Now, the David Price signing to me worked out great.
I agree.
World Series with them.
Yep.
I mean, if you win a World Series, and David Price was terrific in that postseason. Besides the first game against the Yankees, I mean, he's the reason they won it. And he should have been the MVP of the World Series. But I'm just saying, though, after they say they're not going to go over, sign a pitcher over 30 to a long-term deal, then a couple of years down the road, they do it. So ownerships change their philosophy on a few things. And I think that they'll sit back and let Bloom do his thing.
I do too. Yeah.
It's not like they've incredibly interfered, because with ownership that incredibly interferes, you never get you never get championships. That's why the Dallas Cowboys haven't won a championship.
Yes, 100%. Yep.
But they're going to do less of like, okay, here you go, here's your thing. Bring this into the new wave of consistency with Bloom, and I think he started off well. I mean, I really do.
Too. Yep. Okay, so here's my opinion on Alex Cora. I just think it would be weird if he came back. I'm not saying that he shouldn't. I'm not holding anything against him. It just, to me, I'm just going with my gut raw feelings. It just would feel awkward. That's all.
Yeah, it's very difficult to determine or to decide what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Like, as my co-beat writer Chris Cotillo wrote one day, he's like, there was people on the beat who thought that Bloom totally ruled him out at that end of the year press conference, and then there were some people on the beat that thought, okay, Cora's coming back. And I was one of the people that thought like he didn't rule him out and that there's a chance. But I think that what they're going to do is they're going to at least talk to him when he when the World Series ends and his suspension's over, and I feel like he's going to be a candidate. You look at some of the things. It was interesting things that Jerry Remy said, on certain broadcasts this year. Like he brought up how Devers didn't hustle down to first base.
Yeah.
On routine ground balls, but I mean that's what major leaguers do sometimes. Like Cora was all over him. And he said, and Remy said, like, he wouldn't have done that if Cora was the manager. Cora would have said something. And what I said to the other day to my co-beat writer Cotillo, I was like, people think, well, Cora's the only guy that can come in and hold them accountable and stuff like that, or he's that type of guy that you want that can say something like, do this, hustle down to first and call people out in the media, when there's other candidates that are just like Cora that, could do that. One guy that really comes to mind, and I don't know if he'll be a candidate. I'm the one that keeps bringing up his name, and, no one else is, so he probably isn't a candidate, but someone with the same type of personality is Carlos Pena, who was with, everybody brings up Sam Folt is a guy that was with, Bloom in Tampa Bay, and who's a potential managerial candidate. He is probably a potential managerial candidate. He's very smart. He went to I think he went to Stanford. So I don't know if that's technically an Ivy League school, but
It's a
really
good school. Yep.
So he's a smart guy. He's from the area. I think his mother was like a senator or something, or in something in the government, elected official in New Hampshire. Comes from a smart family, and he was with Bloom for a while there in Tampa. And but
Yeah.
a guy like we saw with Cora, that you just have to have the right personality. You have to be able to hold people accountable, and you have to be able to be a teacher. And he was a teacher to guys like Xander Bogaerts. He was constantly out there spring training showing them, this is what you're doing with your first step. Make it like this. And
Yep.
and if you get a guy in there like Carlos Pena, who has so much experience and who's respected, and would gain the respect. So if somebody was called out or something like that, they would be fine with it. There's other candidates besides Alex Cora that could do this job.
Yeah.
And I think that's what some of the other people that cover the team or people in maybe the larger media don't get. It's like they automatically assume that it has to be Alex Cora. Well, there are definitely other candidates. It doesn't just have to be Alex Cora.
I was thinking of another Carlos because I was with Carlos Fables in Devers in Portland, and I know that Devers really looked up to him. And Carlos can be tough, and I think in a good way. He was like that with Lynn. I think he's a sleeper guy, but you're right. And if from when I was a kid to now, the managerial pool or candidates and guys that get hired are so out of left field, which I like. It used to be, all right, that guy that's out of the game, they would just recycle. And I like now that they don't do that, because it does, you get someone that's not managed. I mean, they're going to really, you could look at it the other way. You could say, well, they're inexperienced, but I look at it like they're going to really work their butt off. I like the process now of it.
And you have to have the right personality too. If you're not going to have managed, if you're not going to have managed before and you're going to bring in no experience. One of the things that the Red Sox did that probably helped out Cora, I don't know, I've never talked to him about this, was, they brought Renicky in as bench coach, where they asked them, I think it came down to Renicky and Jim Tracy. They wanted somebody that was had previous manager. You can pick your bench coach, but we want them to have had previous managerial experience. And that personality, you can see it with some players, when they're players themselves. You could see it with Cora. I mean, Francona told him, you're going to be a manager. And, you can see it. I mean, I'm sure people thought the same thing about Aaron Boone, when he was with the Yankees and other places and stuff like that. Like, this guy has that ability to just, manage. And, so, yeah, I mean, I think that you don't have to have experience to manage in this game right now. You have to have, you have to embrace, you have to embrace the newness of the games, the shifts, all that. And you also have to have the personality. And, some of the best managers, go about things new school and old school way, not all the thinking has to go into new school, analytics.
And it's very multifaceted. I mean, you have to almost be the face of the franchise, the way you speak to the media, the way you hold, now you're getting interviewed during games. So I think there's a lot more to the job, where the X's and O's now, I've always thought the X's and O's can be lower, because you're right. You have to live with these guys. You have to sometimes trick them into thinking they're good, but there's a lot more to the job that maybe some of the old school guys don't like, right? Because you're really in the limelight now.
Yeah. And, it's funny because people say something like, well, Renicky, is an older guy, and so he doesn't know analytics or whatever. But The analytics thing really came within, I mean, the shifts. If you look at like Jackie Brad, a lot of these guys are learning it on the fly.
Sure.
Alex Cora, for instance, I'm sure he didn't know about all the stuff right now that when he, was a player 10 years ago, or whatever. Um, you look at the shifts, it's incredible. And what the Tampa Bay Rays are doing, on defense is incredible, but they also have guys in the right place. I mean, you look at that first game and there was two guys. I mean, there was bullets hit to them, and they made outs.
It's
But
incredible. Yeah.
we saw that a lot with the 2018 Red Sox. I was
Yeah.
actually talking to somebody. I was like, there was only one time. I think it was in Kansas City, where the Red Sox just overshifted, and it was real in the outfield.
Yeah.
And they had their right fielder way towards center field, and the guy dropped it into, right down the right field line. And, it would have been an out if he was, in regular position. But I was like, the Red Sox were so perfect that year in their shifts. I actually asked, and they don't have this number, but I asked one of them, I'm like, one of the analytics guys, I was like, can you tell me like the percentage of how many times you actually got things correct? And maybe they will eventually have that. But, I mean, they had to have been, pretty much correct, like 90 to 95% of times on shifts that year.
Yeah.
And the Rays are doing it this year. And you look at the increase of shifts, it's incredible. Jackie Bradley gets shifted on by like 10, 15, 20% more each year,
Yep.
And so the amount of stuff that's going into the game, it's not like, you have to have a young guy that's known this stuff. Everybody's learning it,
Sure.
Everybody's learning it as they go, because there's all this new information that's coming that wasn't there even 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, I know it bothers people. They look in their hats, but I mean, everything changes in the history. When I was watching the game in the '80s, there were older people that said, "Oh, this game now," in the '50s, but I think that's what's great about you want it to evolve, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's
I mean,
more
I think
people are definitely watching the baseball now too.
yeah, I mean, I think there's, so baseball's criticized for a couple things, obviously length of game, which
Yeah,
you have ability to figure, stuff out with that. Another thing is that people think it's become a, strikeout versus, home run outcome, and that there's not, those rallies where you see a bunch of hits strung together, and, that happens. But, like, you look at a guy like Dahlback, and, people, there was somebody that, a radio host, I won't name, in Boston, that wrote a column for his website that, that used to cover the Red Sox a lot. And he was like, are you still there?
yep.
Okay, sorry, something went off on mine. But yeah, he was, sorry, yeah, I got you now. Sorry about that.
No
I got
problem.
an incoming call from somebody else, and then something got screwed up. But he was saying like Dahlback's an outcome, a strikeout or a home run guy. And I don't look at Dahlback that way. I actually look at him like, every year in the minor leagues, his strikeout numbers went down. And I've talked to him, and he's really, like, in Double-A, I talked to him about his analytics and stuff like that, and how he'd like to embrace that stuff when he gets up to the major leagues, and how he was already thinking analytically at that time. And, so I think that we're going to see like a guy like Dahlback. He's not going to be, a strikeout, a home run guy outcome. He's going to be a pretty good hitter that, has a high on base percentage, that really slugs. And,
He's smart.
the strikeout percentage will be there. It's always going to be there to some degree. But, you look at, Alex Spear tweeted it out during the season. It was like over the first so many games of Dahlback's career. He had a 44%, but, Alex wasn't making this out to be negative. He was writing, like, oh, these are the stats. And he also included that there was a 44% strikeout rate or something like that. And I went back and looked at Aaron Judge's first season. And I'm not saying that he's going to be Aaron Judge, but he had the same exact, it was either 44 or 41% strikeout percentage. And, and Judge had a few more games and a few more, plate appearances. And so, the smart hitters, figure it out. And this is
Yes.
a guy that, is a smart guy, and he thinks, and, he goes back to the workroom, and, and he, I could see him being the type of guy that looks at things like JD Martinez,
Yep.
um, and so this, I don't think it is an all outcome, strikeout or home run type of game. And I don't think that's necessarily what they're trying to make it either. I mean, Cora would talk about all the time about embracing, like, you have to make contact, like these guys, obviously there's times the strikeout's fine, but, and you want to hit a home, the strikeout home run outcome's fine. But, if you've got a guy at, third base and with one out, you've got to make contact there.
Yeah.
And, that's something that I think Dahlback will be able to do throughout his career.
His swing is different. Jerry Remy pointed that out. He's not that uppercut launch
Yeah.
angle. He's, I thought watching him at that alternate site, he didn't try to hit home runs. He was grinding out at bats like he was in the big leagues. But, the other thing too, Chris, like these guys, we sometimes, when they're in the minors, we kind of label them, that's how they're going to be, but they are allowed to get better and develop.
Oh, it's unbelievable how, guys are labeled in the minors. And it's funny because I wrote it today, going into the 2018 season, Tanner Houck was, the number 3 prospect, and they had just drafted him in the first round the year before. And his numbers were terrible, at Salem, but they were like, throw the 4-seamer, don't throw the 2-seamer at that point. And they were overhauling his mechanics and different things like that. And, you look at the total picture, the total package that he is right now. And I think that's the same thing that happened with Lance McCullers when he was in the Astro system, is they were like, I remember, I think they were like, don't focus on statistics, focus on results. And a lot of people get wrapped up in statistics in the minor leagues. And, a guy like Houck's a perfect example, because his ranking within the system probably went down because of things. But, you can see this is a guy that has the mentality and, he could he's going to be a big, they call like a mentality of a big game pitcher or whatever. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to win a World Series game or whatever, but you can see that mentality. He's very focused out there. He's got that mentality. I'm sure it helped him throughout the minors when he was struggling. Those first 12 starts in high A Salem were, horrendous. But, you look at how that helped him. He threw the 4-seamer all the time then, and it got, he got absolutely, killed with it. I mean, his batting average against was over 300. But what did he do the last week of the season to beat the Atlanta Braves? He used the 4-seamer. I think it was 46% of the game. 46% of his pitches in that game were the 4-seamer. In the game before, the majority of his pitches were the 2-seamer. So he's made himself a more versatile pitcher. And so I think it's important to look at development.
Yep.
And I try to do that when I'm tweeting out these stats and stuff and throughout the year and looking at minor league notebooks. I think that Bobby was somebody that probably got annoyed with like people saying, oh, he was just his high strikeout percentage. I tried to look at with Bobby like, okay, it went down, and this is what he's doing, and this is where the on base percentage is. And I talked to some people in Portland, and you were there last year when I heard that he probably should have had like 4 more home runs in the year because everything was getting knocked down because it's freezing cold in Portland. So there's more that goes into the minor leagues, and obviously I'm not the one to tell you that because you see it, you see it.
Yeah, no, he's a great story too. And also like with Houck, I mean, people thought they just kind of pigeonholed him into this reliever role that he couldn't start. And I'd ask the guy, all the players would tell me, this guy's got some of the sickest stuff. They hated facing him, but there was this, and I think he benefited. I think both of those guys, I'm glad we brought them up, have benefited from having Chaim Bloom here.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you look at some of the pitching prospects within the system, and you pointed out, like, it's like, well, the Red Sox have a number 4 pick in 2021, so they could add a big time pitcher. I mean, Jack Leiter, who's a lot of people have him going 2, but I saw her on Baseball America. They rank him number 6.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and so there's a chance to get somebody, and they already have some really exciting, pitchers in the system that, as I said today, like, you don't know if they're going to be better than Houck. You don't know who's going to have a better career, but there's 5 guys that are ranked ahead of him, at this point.
Yeah.
And that's judged by, pure stuff. A lot of factors come into play with that. I mean, can this guy consistently throw strikes? With Mata. I think Mata is going to, as a 21-year-old, what he did a couple of years ago, and you saw it with the high strikeout rate in Portland. I think it was like 7 something strikeouts per 9 innings he was averaging. And it went down to 3 points, I don't know, like 3.6 or 3.2 the next year in 2019. And or maybe that year with Mata was at high A, where he had all those walks. But you get the point. It's like, the raw stuff with some of these guys, like, Mata and, Noah Song, who, I don't know when we'll see him, Thad Ward, some of the wrong stuff. I mean, his sinker was going up to 97. I guess it was sitting at 93, 96. It was going up to 97, and he added a, really lights out cutter.
Yeah.
So look at these guys, and, some of the raw stuff, they're judged, a lot of those rankings are judged on that too. And so there's plenty of guys with good raw stuff in the system. They just got to develop. And, Houck was a perfect example of a guy that was patient through his development, because there was many times that he could have probably got frustrated and been like, the results aren't there, screw this type of thing, but he had the mentality to stick with it and, forget about the results. And I think that's so important with these guys right now.
Yeah. I've realized too, from being around the minor league coaches, that how much they do to help. I mean, they're undervalued, which I get. I mean, we're not going to talk about, you guys do, which is great. All you writers always, you've had a lot of interviews with them, and I've seen you speak to them in the clubhouses, but that you really, I mean, what Paul Abbott's done, Billy McMillan, all the coaches I've seen, I mean, it's really a gift, because you have to, it's not easy, and you got to get guys right. I mean, that's the job. I mean, they want these guys to be right away. And, big credit to how hard they work on that.
It's funny, all those guys, they weren't the most talented Major League Baseball players, but somebody once said to me something like, I'm a better scout because, and I don't know if they said this to me or I read it, so but I did hear it. At one point I heard it. I'm a better scout because, I was an average or below average baseball player. And so, the flaws of everybody, I know I can recognize these things. And so it's good when you've got, guys like, Renicky said it when, he got DFA'd and released or whatever several times. And, a lot of these great coaches, Alex Cora wasn't, an all-star. A lot of these great coaches, and they sit, they don't play as much, and they sit on the bench and they really study the game. And, I mean, the guys, the minor league system guys, I mean, it's just the way that they talked on those Zoom calls, really, the connections that they made, like Bruce with, Jeter Downs.
Yeah.
You can see that connection from both of them, right?
Yeah, it was some raw, though,
It was really impressive, and it's going to be something that helps Jeter Downs going forward, that he had somebody like Bruce that, really got on him and stood by him and said, you can be a better ball player, and this is how.
I say this with all sincerity to what you guys do. I don't know if there's a consensus out there that you guys don't want the Zoom interviews going forward, but I will tell you from watching them this year, I felt that and I know a lot of the guys that were on there, I felt they were better in giving you information. And I think it would be, I think it would be more beneficial to you guys, especially the players, because they seem more comfortable. I thought you got a lot more out of them than you would, in the clubhouse.
So this is the one thing that, like, I thought the Zoom interviews were terrific this year, and I do think we got a lot out of them. The one thing that I miss in my job is like, that one-on-one interview, and you could do a Zoom one-on-one too, but
yeah, I know. Yeah, it's not the same.
People didn't do them this year.
Yeah.
Because it was, I mean, but and I got a lot of stuff from, guys like, David Price in previous years who would, talk to me before the game and would just, give his opinion on this topic and, you know, how MLB is marketing Mookie Betts or something like that. And you can get really guys, some guys are better talking with them alone than they
Yeah.
are with a
Yeah.
group. Two examples. I mean, Jackie Bradley's fine with a group, but he's really good when you talk to him alone.
Sure.
Some guys are just more comfortable with that. Mookie Betts is another guy. His pregame interviews alone were great. If you got him one-on-one, he'd tell you, he'd be very blunt and honest with you and stuff like that. And after the game, after you played a game and stuff like that, and you got a lot of people there in your locker, it's, sometimes you just say the same things over and over. And, and so I miss that element. That's why, that's why I love being a beat writer in baseball, is because of that time that you get with players before games, that you
Yeah.
can, interview players, and the time that you spend at the ballpark. I feel like a lot of that stuff that you get before games is even more interesting than, what you get during the game.
Yeah. No,
I'm
especially for me too. Yeah. I would be, be hard if I
I
lost that.
worked with, like, Bannister for a long time before games when he was in the, the Red Sox clubhouse, when
Yeah.
he was traveling with the team. And I'd be like, he watched video during Red Sox games of, the minor leaguers. He would watch the minor leaguers games, while the Red Sox games were going on, and, studying what they were doing. So he was so embedded in that, knew exactly. There was so much information I got out of him on Tanner Houck.
Yeah.
And so I missed some of that. Um, but it wasn't a bad year. It
Yeah.
could have been a lot worse. And I think a lot of people made the best out of it. You definitely don't want to be the person to, complain about access or complain about, just how things are going, at the ballpark. Oh, I can't go down to this level or whatever. I want to roam a little bit. No, there's a lot more serious things going on in the world with the coronavirus. And, it's a year where you just do, you don't complain, you just do, and you get through it. And, some good things came out of it.
Yeah. No, I agree with, for me too. I mean, I didn't get to see any of the guys
Yeah.
that's not, I was thinking for maybe like a majority of what you guys do, that I thought the guys are more revealing, some of them,
Yeah.
considering how many people were on those calls. If you had all those people in front of them, they might not have said.
Yeah.
But it was probably nice for some of those guys to, like, considering what was going on, to have that was kind of normal to do press conferences, and they were great.
I felt like they were a little awkward at first because,
Yeah, me too.
no, not as much with the players, but I was a little nervous to, like, ask questions because I had never used Zoom. I didn't know what Zoom was before March.
Me either. Yeah.
I never heard of it, and so, like, I'm going on there, and there's, like, 8 million reporters. Oh, it's fine when I ask, Bloom or Sam Kennedy a question, on, at a press conference when there's a million people there. But it felt a little different at first when I was, on the Zoom thing, and they were talking to us before the season started. And I'm like, this is different. And, you don't know if they're going to hear you correctly, or, you're cutting out, or different things like that. And so it was interesting. But, I got over that, quickly. And it was a productive year.
Yeah, when I do family ones, I find it awkward because you have to look at the camera the whole time.
Yes.
If you're not, then you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were some interesting things that, we did this year to change it up. I did it one time with Reneke's pregame interview. I did, like, the Seinfeld background, the apartment.
Oh, nice.
So, so you can have some fun. And, it was like the year where everybody was just in a t-shirt, and, I could be out on the deck here too,
Yeah.
like it was different because you could only have one reporter per outlet at a game. So, me and Cotillo were switching off games at Fenway Park, and all the away games we were doing from home.
Yeah.
So, I was just sitting out here, relaxing before the game, interviewing the manager and any players they gave us before the game, like out on the porch. And a couple of the writers were saying to me, "Oh, you look a little relaxed today,"
Yeah.
but it was just fun. It was fun. It was fun that way too.
Was it weird going to Fenway?
It was, and I think they did a really good job of, enforcing rules, making us feel safe. I wasn't, too excited, to going in there at first because I thought like, I was nervous. I hadn't gone for the whole entire like 3 month shutdown that we had between when I got back from spring training and when, the season started. I only went to like one like I ate into a grocery store only one time or two
Wow.
times. I had like groceries delivered, and I was the type that when a box came from Amazon, and a lot of those came because my wife orders like 20 boxes a day to the door. I would wash them off and wear gloves out there and wash them off of where I opened it and stuff like that. And now we learn more and more about coronavirus, and it's probably not as much on things and stuff like that. But I was a little paranoid at first, going to Fenway and touching things. And I didn't want to like, they give you a boxed lunch, but I would always bring lunch at first, I would bring
Yeah.
my own food because I didn't want to touch anything that somebody else's hands were on. But I think that, they did a good job of making us feel safe and, keeping a good distance between everybody. They allowed us, like, if you want to go outside and work outside and, on the fifth floor, with those stool seats that are, the roof seats at Fenway, go out there and do it. And that's what I
Nice.
did most of the season. It's not probably because I felt uncomfortable with going in the press box. I did a couple times, but it was more like, well, it's kind of a cool opportunity to watch a game outside, that
Yeah.
you're not going to do, in future years. So it was an interesting year of going in there, and it was weird, you know. I would be at Fenway Park at 2:30 like every day, in previous years. And some days you were doing Zoom calls at home and you'd go right in there before game time.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting, and there was, but everybody really did a good job, I think. And it was, overall it was a positive experience.
So was this interview, Chris. Terrific. Hope you have continued success and that your daughter grows up to be not a baseball writer. Just kidding.
Exactly. Stick away from the baseball. You can enjoy the game, but no, not baseball writing. But if she, it's funny because Ian, I don't mean to keep you long here, but
No,
Ian
it's
Brown said that about his son. I think I know he told his son, like, do something else. You don't have to do the sports writing. What's he in college now for? Journalism. So
yeah.
you can tell your kids as much as you want not to do things, but they're going to do what they want to do. So
Great stuff.